Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Sense with Curtis Scott. And I'm here today with Congressman Jake Ellzey, who is rerunning for U.S. Congress, Texas District 6. How are you doing today, sir?
Hi, Curtis, man. I'm doing so great. I'm coming home soon, so it's
You're
always
coming
good
home
when you
soon.
come home.
Okay, well, so you're up at the cap or in D.C. right now?
I'm in D.C. right now. We are working on all kinds of things, trying to keep the government funded, trying to make sure that our military is funded, trying to pay for our National Guard, trying to secure the border, trying to aid our allies Israel in their fight against evil, against Hamas, with a looming war against Hezbollah on the horizon, most likely, with an Iran that is resurgent everywhere in the world, attacking us through their proxies with the Houthis in the Red Sea, Hezbollah and Hamas, a Russia that is committing genocide against Ukrainians, and China that wants to take over Taiwan and end modern life as we know it. So we've got a very full plate, and we're way behind timeline on all of it.
Yes, sir. So you're already answering some of the questions I'm going to be asking, or you're hitting on them a little bit. So, but first, if you could just kind of give a little intro, a little bio of who you are, a little background for the people that don't really know who you are.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'm a former Navy pilot for 20 years and an airline pilot as well before I got elected to the State House and then in a special election to Congress. I turned 54 this month. I'm married to a beautiful bride, Shelby, and we have two wonderful kids in Ellis County on our 10 acres that we love to go home to and raise our kids and educate them in a wonderful, loving environment and community that we have in Midlothian and Ellis County. As I said, I served for 20 years in the military, did 5 combat tours, one of which was on the ground with SEAL Team 5 as a JTAC with my now colleague, Morgan Luttrell, brother of Marcus, the lone survivor. And I did 9 deployments total, 4.5 years at sea, flying helicopters and jets off of all different kinds of aircraft carriers. I believe that to those who receive a lot, much is required, and that's why I'm in public service and will continue to be so as long as the people will have me.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, sir. So I'll go ahead and start with some questions here. And like I said, you've already kind of run some of those questions, but if we could just give a little more detail. So the first thing is, what is your number one priority as a U.S. representative?
Well, I will say this, I can answer for every Texas Republican. It's national security. And when you're talking about national security, you're talking about the border. Because national security depends on a border that is not allowing 8 million illegals to come through, not allowing fentanyl and drugs killing over 290 Americans every day, 200 of which from fentanyl and human trafficking at the border, not to mention the number of gotaways that we got, and terrorists coming across our border from everywhere across the globe. So for all of us in the Republican conference, in the Republican delegation to Congress, it is border security, because in our community, as you well know, and you know firsthand from your day job, that with I-35, I-45, and 67 coming up through our communities, human trafficking, drug trafficking, and illegal immigration is rampant, not only in our community, but in every community in the United States of America. That is a national security issue. And you think about this, the number one killer of Americans age 18 to 49 is fentanyl. Those chemicals come from China. They are put together by the cartels. It's time to make sure that China isn't allowed to do that, and the cartels pay for what they are doing with warheads on foreheads, for lack of a better term. I'm ready for that. Because if you're losing World War II numbers every day, like we are right now, to fentanyl and drug overdoses, we lost 305 Americans every day to combat overseas, fighting on the part of freedom against evil. And we're losing 290 every day in our bedrooms and our backyards. I'll ask you, is that a real war? I would say so. They are killing us. And we're not, these people that fentanyl is killing, they're not customers. The cartels are trying to kill Americans. And so are the Chinese in a total war type of way, much in the nature of Sun Tzu. They don't think about this the same way we do. The Chinese want to overtake us in every aspect. And if you can take out the youth of any country the way they are with fentanyl coming over at 200 a day, over 100,000 Americans every year dying from this, that is completing your mission without having to fight us on the high seas or on the battlefield. So make no mistake, this is a national security issue. Every piece of it. And that's how I look at it constantly.
Okay, sounds good, sir. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And I know some of these run together a little bit, but I like to just get it to a specific point so that people can hear your voice. And the next question is, how do you feel about the state of our nation? Basically, the state of the union, where it's at right now.
Well, that's a good question, and it's a multi-tiered answer. And I think of it this way because when I see things up here that I don't see back at home, and I see things at home that I don't see back here. So let me start. It's a sincere answer when I tell you this. We moved to Midlothian when I retired from the military in 2012 because it was a community that we knew had good schools, good people, high quality of life for a low cost of living. I still believe that. Our communities are fantastic. I love living in Midlothian. I love living in Ellis County. District 6 is much more my style after the redistricting. It's a lot more rural with great people just working really, really hard, wanting to keep as much of their money in their pockets as they can, educate their kids the way they want to without being indoctrinated. And on a community level, that's happening where I live. So our future is very, very bright in Ellis County, in Midlothian, in the state of Texas. It's at the national level that we're on the wrong track, and we have been for many, many years. There are multiple reasons for that. Our debt is extremely high. It's as high as it was at the end of World War II. Now, as we're looking at worldwide combat yet again, that puts us in a tough spot. So we have to get our spending under control. 70 cents out of every dollar that the federal government spends is already spoken for. It's by law. As an appropriator, I don't get to touch it. 70 cents on the dollar. Now, by contrast, in 1947, when we had 100% of GDP to debt to GDP, our mandatory spending, which is what that 70 cents is, was only 35 cents on the dollar. And we had access to 65% that we could change. That has to go back to that. Otherwise, we won't get this fiscal house in order. And of that 30 cents that we can spend on any way we want to, 15 of it, or 50% of the discretionary budget, is defense. Now, right now, with 4 regimes that are acting as they did in 1938, little dictators with inferiority complexes in charge of highly advanced nations with an inferiority complex who want to go to war will do so, and they will combine to do that together, just as Hitler, Hirohito, and Mussolini did in World War II. Now we have Putin, Xi Jinping, the Ayatollahs, and we have North Korea. This is very similar, and they're all combining with each other. The Russians are using both Iranian and North Korean weapons in Ukraine. The Iranians are using Russian weapons. So they are combined, and if we're not careful, could get worse. That's why we need a strong president. That's why the 24 election is so important. We need a Republican president. We need a Republican Congress so that we, through at least a strong federal government, our adversaries are less likely to do something silly. Right now, there's no imperative to do that because the people in charge in the executive branch have shown no willingness to show for consequences for bad actors throughout the world.
Yes, sir. It's kind of crazy to me that just a couple years ago we had pretty much peace, and now we are literally at world war. I mean, if you look at all the nations at war right now, it looks like the beginning of World War II. So
if you throw in crypto and economic, you could very well make that case because crypto attacks are being launched against all of our institutions by the Chinese and the Russians constantly. That is, by definition, an act of war. When you talk about how many folks we're losing to fentanyl and the compounds that are coming over from China, you can stretch that argument the way you want to. I am not interested in going back to war. You were a Marine. I was a Navy pilot. I don't want to send American troops overseas. That 20-year and 17-year war in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially under this administration, they yanked us out of there with nothing to show for it. So I'm not interested in doing that again, but I am interested in having a Reagan-esque president who is willing to stand up and say, if you slap me in the face, I'm going to punch you in the nose. It's going to hurt a lot more for you to come after me, for me to go after you than it is for you to come after me. I don't get the sense that the Houthis in the Red Sea are getting that impression. I don't get the sense that the Russians feel that way. I don't feel that the Chinese feel that way. And I dang sure feel like the Ayatollahs don't care. At a time in which we have a known vice president who is not up to the task and spends most of her time in California. When was the last time you heard from this vice president? And at a time when the decline of our president is abundantly clear. He's been doing this for 50 years. The man who joined the Senate at age 29 in 53 years ago, actually before I was born, that's not the same guy that's in the White House right now. And we know that the Bernie type folks are the ones behind the power in D.C. They are outsourcing our pollution by insisting that we stop the exporting of our clean energy and importing energy from Russia and China. We should be energy independent, unleashing our economy so that we don't rely on nor need to rely on the Middle East, nor need to send our assets over there. We need to be independent of all those. And with Donald Trump, you had that. And I don't think for one second that if Donald Trump had been reelected in 2020, that we would have ever talked about Ukraine. Most people wouldn't have been able to find it on a map. But once Joe Biden got elected and put Anthony Blinken in charge of the State Department, they knew that they could get away with it because they tried it under Obama and got away with it in Georgia. We could talk about that for hours. But they need a strong response. So at least our adversaries need to know that in Congress, in the House of Representatives, we're not putting up with it.
Yes, sir. So you spoke a little bit about the border. And so this is one of the questions I asked all the candidates. And so what is your stance? What can we do to stop what's going on, this invasion? Do you have a plan? Do you have anything in place? Any ideas that can help stop this?
Well, like you, I get that question all the time. We are a constitutional republic. Would that it were that Congress had executive authority in the House of Representatives. We do not. Elections have consequences.
Sure.
We have the laws on the books that this administration is not enforcing. We can hold funding bills for other places hostage to an executive branch that has shown no inclination to secure the border. Indeed, they almost welcome it. And in fact, that's what Joe Biden said the day he got elected. If he were to institute an immediate executive order for remain in Mexico, 70% of the immigration at the border would stop immediately. Now, I, as congressman for the 6th District of Texas, cannot do an executive order. What happens in a shutdown? If holding the border hostage to the shutdown that's a circular firing squad, because you don't pay your military and you don't pay your border patrol in a shutdown. So if the border is your priority and you're threatening a shutdown to secure the border, then you're threatening to not pay the people who are securing the border. It doesn't make any sense. We don't gain anything from that. There is no win in a shutdown. I don't care what anybody tells you they think they understand about a shutdown. You don't save any money. No work gets done, and then they get back pay when we go back into when the government opens back up again. There is nothing good, not one thing, because if there were, I would advocate for it, but there's not. And listening to a tweet that says just burn it all down, shut it all down, the problem at the border will get worse. That is a promise. If we shut down, you will see massive immigration. You will see Border Patrol taking sick leave because now they understand that Congress doesn't have their backs. I'm sorry, you as a military man and me as a military man, if I'm off the coast of Lebanon in an aircraft carrier right now and my wife is back at home with our 2- and 3-year-old kids and I'm threatening from Congress to shut down the government and not give them the money to pay for rent, for formula, for their car payment, for all their bills, what would you feel about Congress at that point? The very people who are supposed to be defending us. You and I both know that the number one job of any government, whether it's the city of Midlothian, the county of Ellis, the state of Texas, or the United States of America, the primary job of all of those governments is public safety. Public safety is job one. It's not paying for other people's medical expenses. It's provide for the security of the United States. That means the border. That means the military. So a shutdown does not help.
Yes, sir.
I keep hearing people just shut it down. Okay, let me explain to you the second and third order effects. As a Navy pilot who dropped weapons in combat, I worry about collateral damage from any 500-pound bomb that blew up, because that's a big boom. And if there's a threat that I'm going to kill innocent civilians, on the second order of that, the collateral damage estimate, I don't drop. The collateral damage of a shutdown is we don't pay the people protecting our nation. That's nuts. And I'm not going to be a party to that.
And at the same time, most of the Congress, I know somebody tried to push a bill to where Congress wouldn't get paid during the shutdown. And that's the thing, is everybody else is getting paid, but not the military. So I'm right there on some of the things. It's so frustrating on our end as citizens that we watch this out of control executive branch, and then we've got
Yes.
half of Congress is also out of control. They're controlled by the Democrats. So
that is where elections have consequences. So we got to get it right in 24.
sure.
This constitutional republic that we're in, if I have people say, tell me what Article 1, Section 8 says, that is where we get our abilities to do what we do in Congress. Article 2 executes the laws. We've already made the laws. I can't be both the executor and the lawmaker. I'm sure that a lot of people wish Congress could do that, but that would not be a constitutional republic anymore. Do I think that this administration is executing the laws as written? Almost none of them. And what they have done is run rampant with an administrative state of three-letter agencies who restrict the ability of American businesses to thrive and profit, and indeed shut down American businesses at the expense of our adversaries' businesses and their energy production, notably China and Russia. And I think that they've done a terrible job of making this economy prosper. If we were energy independent and cut back a lot of our regulations and opened up the ability for small business owners, which produce 60% of the nation's jobs, to get the capital that they need, our economy would make us independent of anybody else. It would allow us to reindustrialize our national defense, because I'm warning you right now, the echoes of 1938 are very, very loud again. The Chinese are outbuilding us on ships 10-1. They're outbuilding us on the ability to what we call magazine their weapons. So their supplies of weapons vastly surpasses us. They're getting ready for something bad. And if we're going to bury our heads in the sand and act like it didn't happen, it's my responsibility to answer to the people who elected me on why we need to increase our building, increase our military. Part of the problem is we can't recruit anybody because the folks who generally join the military are now being ostracized and being told they're not good people. Now that is an institutional problem that the military has, brought on by DEI and by woke policies. The only thing I care about, and the only thing I cared about in my 20 years in the Navy, was I didn't care how anybody looked, because skin tone has nothing to do with lethality. And I know you fought alongside men and women from various backgrounds and nationalities, and so did I. And I didn't care. The only thing I cared about was when my wingman lets loose that 500 or 1,000-pound bomb, that it's a bullseye and it kills the bad guys. If we're not worried about that in our military, we've got it all wrong. And I think that's why, certainly in the Army, they can't recruit. The one group that has met their recruiting goals, which one is that?
Semper Fi.
The Marine Corps, because when they advertise what their job is, it's to kill bad guys. If it's about something else, and there's some terrible commercials out there about why is it you should join the Navy, because you've got it's not worth going into in this short timeline. But
yes, sir. So
you know what I'm
right,
talking about.
Yes, sir. I'm right there with you on a lot of that stuff. I mean, we trained, and it sounds crazy to a lot of people. As a Marine, we shouted chants that people in the civilian world would think we're mercenaries and everything else, but kill, what makes the grass grow greener, stuff like that. But that's what we trained for, and you know, it's crazy. You talked a little bit earlier, but we prayed for war, which is crazy to me now. But we wanted to use our skills. I mean, that's what we were there for. And we prayed that back then North Korea would mess up so we could go annihilate them. But today we live in a total different world. We live in a nuclear world where so many nations like Iran, and I could go on and on. This is more about giving you your voice to the people. So I do want to, speaking of the voice of the people, I had some of them reach out to me and they wanted to ask questions about like why you voted on certain things. And one of them was about, because I totally hear that you're saying that you're against, you know, this border crap that's going on. But one of the votes that someone brought to my attention, it was, and they said, why did you vote no on impeaching Mayorkas? I looked it up, but I've heard you say that you want to impeach him. So if you
That's
could,
not true. That's just absolutely false.
So on one of the votes, when you go to like true to vote, that's what it says, is that you voted no to impeaching him. And that's
No,
where
I have openly called for his impeachment. So
and I've
true to
seen
vote
that.
true to vote is lying to you.
Yeah,
if you want to get the truth, call my office and I can get you the voting record for everything I've ever done. But that is absolutely false. And so here you've just brought up a good point.
Oh, yes. If
you get your news from Instagram or Twitter or your neighbor, you're probably not doing it right. Yes. But if you really want the news on, in fact, my voting record is online. It's public record. So true to vote, there are people, here's my constituents and your listeners need to understand that there are people with an agenda out there who do not care what the truth is. True to vote. So basically you're telling me it's the truth, but you're lying about it. And then you're going to cover it up by saying you're true to vote. It's a flat out falsehood. I don't know. I don't know who runs that. I've never heard of it.
It's vote something. I saw it because somebody sent it to me. Yeah. And that's where, like, I wanted to clarify, because I heard you talk about, like, hey, we need to impeach him. And that's one of the things talking about the border is.
I know what you're talking about. Here's the deal. So Marjorie Taylor Greene put up a call to impeach Mayorkas. Well,
yes, that's what it.
The Homeland Security Committee was bringing up an impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, which I have openly called for. There are people here who will do a messaging bill so that they can get attention that has no chance of passing. But she was asked not to do that because the chairman of Homeland Security has jurisdiction over the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, which is currently ongoing. And once that happens, I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. So that clarifies it right there. Like I said, I had quite a few people hit me up on that. There were a few other things, but I mean, of course, you know, I heard you talking on DV LeBron on the LS Talker, talking about like the FBI, stuff like that. But so my next question that kind of leads into is, do you support reducing the size of the federal government? Which you touched on that, but if you could just go a little more in depth, like, is there a plan that we can do? Is there somewhere Congress can cut some budget, something like that?
In the appropriations bills, we've already done it. We've got people on our side of the aisle voting no on the rule to bring that bill to the floor. On our side, we've already done it in the appropriations bills. I'm an appropriator. So you have an authorizer, like House Armed Services authorizes the military and what they buy and purchase. And then somebody has to write the checks. That's the appropriations committee. So unless you write the checks, you don't buy anything, right? It's like dad telling his son he can have a banana split and mom says you can have a dip of ice cream or dip of vanilla, right? So that's the appropriations process. We've already done that in the appropriations bills. So we're hearing that we don't do anything here, but we've got people on our side of the aisle who don't, to make it simple, they vote not to bring that bill to the floor. Okay. You're going to have to explain that because you can't be the virus and the vaccine at the same time. So we've done that in these appropriations bills. They're not being brought to the floor. They're already out of the committee. So I'm as frustrated as anybody else, but that is the job of the appropriations committee, who is chaired by Kay Granger from Fort Worth. She's the chairwoman. And we've already done that incredibly well in the appropriations committee. And no action's been taken because they keep voting down the rule, which incidentally hasn't happened in 20 years. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So if you just want to vote no, then you deserve to be in the minority. We have to govern. And these spending bills cut, but they cut what we're spending, and they also have policies that roll back DEI and woke policies throughout the federal government. And until they're put through, That's never going to happen, but it's waiting. It's waiting right now to be voted on in so many different bills in the House. And you're going to have to ask some of my colleagues why they're voting no on the rules to not bring them to the floor. Because that's not on me, not on Appropriations Committee. That's on them.
Okay. So that kind of leads into the next question. I know you've talked with DV LeBron on his show, and he asked you about this. So I have a little bit of clue of what you're going to answer here, even a little bit, just so the people can hear, though. And why did you vote no to remove the funding for the FBI building?
Do you have any generals that you don't like?
There might have been a few, not too many. Most of the Marine Corps generals we like. There's some Army guys I don't like so much.
Okay, let's take the Army, for example. You've got an Army general you don't like. You don't have to say his name, right?
Yeah.
Do you defund the Army?
Don't defund the Army.
Do you defund the police because you don't like the chief? Do you defund the nation's preeminent law enforcement agency with 40,000 agents who are solely responsible for combining with the DEA to stop drugs, preventing terrorist attacks on American soil, which haven't happened since 9/11, because you don't like what 10 people at the top have done? No, sir. Like the NSA and the CIA, the 50-year-old building in the middle of Washington, D.C. is both falling down and it's a target. I want my MI5, which is the FBI, which is responsible for preventing terrorist attacks on our soil, to have a new headquarters. And by the way, before I got here, that funding was already voted on. Somebody tried to take it back. And I said, no, they need a new headquarters outside of Washington, D.C. Y'all remember the Murrah building in Oklahoma City? Y'all remember Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia? A truck pulled up right next to the building, killed 200 Americans and 300 Americans, respectively, because they were too close to the street. The FBI is on the main street in Washington, D.C. It's a target. So people who, like you and me, understand force protection recognize the terrorist target, the cartel's target, needs to be outside of Washington, D.C. on a 60-acre plot so that it can protect Americans every day. And if it gets bombed, innocent civilians in Washington, D.C. and our capital don't get bombed like they did in 9/11. That's why people have to understand the second and third order effects of everything they're doing. You don't like the top 20 people at the FBI? Neither do I. I'm not going to defund 40,000 FBI agents. I was at the FBI headquarters in Dallas, Texas. You should see the things that they do in Dallas, Texas, to protect the people of North Texas. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, they're our fellow Texans who are working to secure us no differently than you do in Midlothian. I'm not about to defund our police force at the national level because of rot at the top. Since J. Edgar Hoover, there's been rot at the top. Something needs to be done about that. But they are the one thing standing in between us and the terrorists destroying our nation from within. I'm not about to defund them.
So is there something that we could do? So one of the things I know that we've had this deep state thing where it seems like the FBI has kind of gone towards politicization or whatever you want to call it. Is there something you can see we can do to change some of that we can, refund the FBI, do something? I know one of the things I would love to see is that it becomes not politicized and to where we do like a USVI or something, because it's definitely, we look at Trump and what happened to him and the FBI and the CIA both. We can see they clearly did some things in an election that weren't so fair for him, especially. And that's where I think a lot of our people here in our area, especially, are so concerned on that. And myself included, that, like you said, if you have a bad chief, you don't defund necessarily, but if we could refund, do something, is there anything you see that we could do with that? Or?
Well, the FBI is an executive branch agency. And again, until we have a change of president in 2024, there's the FBI director was appointed by Trump. Not John Ray. Sorry, John. Sorry, John. Christopher Ray was appointed by Donald Trump. And so, I think an accountability, I think a real American being the president of the United States, holding people to account, that is what we do. We can only keep, we have so many hours in the day. We got to fund the government. We got to protect the government. We got to fund the military. And also, but Jamie Comer and Jim Jordan are digging as deep as they can, as fast as they can. We are impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas. Once that happens, and it probably won't get through the Senate, I don't think they have the votes. But if you replace Alejandro Mayorkas, somebody right like that goes back in. This is the worst administration to ever exist in our country. Joe Biden will go down as the worst president in our nation's history because this is unconscionable what he's doing to our economy, outsourcing our energy needs, coddling the enemies of the United States, and of course the Clinton administration through the dossier did some terrible things with the FBI. Some of those folks have been fired. Some of them should be tried. We also have to get the DOJ back, but it's interesting because the DOJ has oversight of the FBI. So could you do a reorganization of the federal government? Yes, you could. Absolutely, you could. And I think that those will flush themselves out with Jamie Comer and Jim Jordan. And I think we need an agency reorganization where Congress absorbs all those back because, as I said before, the FBI, the SEC, the FCC, the EPA, they are all federal agencies that have turned themselves into both lawmakers and taxing authorities through rules and fees. Now, that is absolutely wrong. The Administrative Procedures Act of 1948 needs to be completely repealed, and Congress needs to absorb the responsibilities of those agencies and take them back because the executive branch doesn't have the right to make the rules. In fact, the Chevron case, the ability for agencies to, which the Supreme Court is addressing right now, there are a lot of things that we can do, and I am indeed in favor of. And of course, I need to remind everybody, we have 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government right now. We have the House, and that's it. So 2024, get out and vote. Your preferred candidate may not be the nominee for president in 24. I don't know who it is, but I can guarantee you I will be voting Republican regardless, because the path that we're on is not sustainable for a free, prosperous United States of America. We have to change administrations. I feel very convinced we're going to get the Senate. If we're not careful and we go to a shutdown, the Republicans will pay the price for that, and we risk our majority. So if you want to be in the minority, that's apparent if you do a CR, because the only people that has ever hurt in the shutdowns that we've ever had are the Republicans when we were in the majority, and then we lost it. So if we lose the House, we lose the power of the purse. So we have to govern. We have to show the American people that we can actually function and make the federal government work, because the power of the purse relies solely on the House, and then it goes to the Senate. Under the next year, if Chuck Schumer has the ability to shove some terrible spending bills down our throats because we can't govern and we try to shut down, we're gonna pay for that in 2024. So our Republican team needs to get together. When you legislate under our system, you never get 100% of what you want, because the people who are saying they're constitutional conservatives and believe in the republic, and yet at the same time want a dictator in the House, those two things don't work together.
Okay. So I know you're probably running a little short on time. How much time do you have left here?
I got 3 or 4 more minutes.
3 or 4 more minutes. So, okay. So
My coffee's not done yet.
Trying to answer some of the questions that I've asked every candidate, and one of them is, you already kind of talked about Ukraine, but I'd like to go into the Constitution. And do you believe the Constitution is the supreme law of the land?
Yeah.
So, and because I know we talked about this a little bit, and you're talking about like our executive branch is breaking a lot of these laws, and that's where I think your constituents are.
And so are our courts.
Texas. Oh,
there's a reason. There's a reason Article 3 is the shortest article, and we have relied way too much on the Supreme Court, and we've relied too much on the lower courts to settle the fights that we have, because many years ago, Congress decided they just want to stay in power, and in order to get elected, they're going to outsource the ability to the agencies through the Administrative Procedures Act right after World War II to the executive branch. And the courts are now doing things. Remember, in COVID, CDC ran the country. CDC was able to prevent property owners from collecting rent. I haven't forgotten that.
Oh, yeah.
I have not forgotten that.
Yeah.
There are agencies that I would rather do away with completely. That The state of Texas and every 50 state, all of the 50 states have their own EPA. For us, it's TCEQ. We have that in Texas. I'm all for clean air and water. We don't need the EPA to tell Texas to do something more than it already does, because you can't get elected or stay in power or run anything. You can't be dog catcher if you are for pollution. We have the cleanest environment we've ever had. You remember this? Well, no, you don't. I remember the 70s. I remember what LA looked like. I remember what Cleveland looked like. The Monongahela River was so polluted that dead fish were climbing up. We have clean air and water now. So we don't need the EPA to make life worse for us. And that's true for several different agencies. In fact, in the appropriations bill, which has not passed yet, we cut the EPA by 40%. We did. And I'm on that committee. And I'm very proud of that. But if we don't bring that to the floor and get it over to the Senate and to the president, it's not going to become law. So the folks who are putting a stop on our side of the aisle and want to shut down our country, we can't legislate if we're shut down. I can't pass a bill. I can't vote. People need to think about the second, third order effects. And here's the thing I'll leave you with on that before you go off to your next question. It is my job as a legislator to think about the second and third order effects of everything I do. If I vote based on emotion, I'm doing a disservice to the people of this state and to the people of this country. So I don't engage in that. My arguments are based on rational decision making and logic. And if I'm at the 51% on any vote, that this is 51% good, then I'm all in. And people need to understand that I don't vote based on emotion. I have colleagues who do. That is a path to destruction, and I won't engage in that.
Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit. I think I already know. I think most of the people know where you stand on the Second Amendment, because where we're at right now, I mean, there's so many laws. We just mentioned with our courts even trying to play lawfare. I mean, there's so many things going on, but they're trying to take away our Second Amendment rights, especially the Democratic side. And I think I know where you stand on this, but if you could just say in a short, brief few minutes here, what is your stance on the Second Amendment?
I don't need that much time. I'm a strong Second Amendment proponent. My voting record proves it. And this last weekend, I received the Bull Elephant Award from the Dallas Safari Club for ensuring our Second Amendment rights. So I'm very proud of my Second Amendment stance, and not only here, but also in the State House. So I've got a very strong Second Amendment stance, and I'm very proud of it.
I think every Republican pretty much does, but that's some of the things people are definitely, I know in our area, are very frustrated with seeing things come up. And of course, a lot of it's the news cycle, stuff like that. They keep pushing this stuff out. And
sure.
And that's where.
Well, if you'll recall, I asked the ATF director, listen, when I ask people questions, I don't do it to get on TV. I don't do it to show an outrage so I can raise money. I just very simply asked him, hey, thanks for your sacrifice. Thanks for being here. Can you define an assault weapon for me? And he's a Harvard-educated lawyer, and he couldn't. And it made the rounds. It went viral because he couldn't. And when he ran for attorney general of his state before, he said, I'm going to ban assault weapons. That is an assault weapon. In fact, assault weapon is redundant. I can poke you in the eye with that, and it's a weapon that I assault you with. I can do it with this. I can do it with this cup. This is my Navy cup. I'm not going to do that. But a piece of paper you can shove down somebody's throat. So assault weapon is redundant, and that's why they don't understand what they're talking. Anybody who says that, it's either a weapon or I've assaulted you with something else that became a weapon. So we're going down a different path here. I know the difference, and so if people will go back, we've got it on the website of me interrogating the smartest guy in the room who came out looking like the biggest idiot.
Yeah. So I know you don't have much more time. So if we could just finish off, if you want to wrap up, I know we spoke a little bit about Ukraine, but if you just want to, like I said, I know you don't have a whole lot of time here. So if you could just a real short synopsis, here's, I think, the biggest question that voters have is, would you send any more funding to Ukraine?
Well,
support that.
That is like the rest of the world. That is much more complex than the question. Should we send money to Israel? Should we send money to our allies? Should we send money to our friends? And the question, the first question is, should we send more funding? We're sending weapons and a little bit of funding. And we're also rebuilding our own weapon stockpiles. We sent them old stuff that was about to time out anyway. They put a dollar value on that. It had already been paid for. We need to reindustrialize our military base, and we need to understand when somebody said to me the other day, because they heard it from somebody else, that there's no strategic interest of the United States in Ukraine. Number one, 400,000 Ukrainian children have been stolen from their parents in Ukraine and taken to Russia for re-education. Their women have been raped. They have been burned. It is total war. They are bombing apartment buildings. This is an eradication of a people. It is evil. The same thing that Hamas did to the Israelis, the Russians have done to the Ukrainians for their land on an internationally recognized border. And right next to Ukraine is Poland. Vladimir Putin is an imperialist who wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. That includes Poland. That includes Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. That invokes Article 5 of the NATO Charter. If that happens, we are committed. I have lost friends in combat, and I have lost friends to suicide. I do not want to be involved in a land war in Europe, but I'm dang sure willing to let Ukraine fight for their own independence. This is the first time that we put strings attached to things that we have sent over there. But I will promise and tell you, because I go to the rough places. I went to Israel 3 months before the war started, and I went to Ukraine 9 months after that war started. I know where the weapons are going. I know where the money is going, and so does everybody else because it's out there. So this is 1938 again. Ukraine is the Sudetenland. When England gave up the Sudetenland, part of Czechoslovakia, to Hitler to stop the war, well, he was wrong. And that started World War II. I know a little bit about strategy, and I know a little bit about combat. And I also know a lot about history. And we're staring 1938 in the face once again. And I'll be danged if, as a congressman, I want to trundle into World War III because I buried my head in the sand and said, he's not coming for us, because Vladimir Putin's coming for us. And I'm more than willing to let the Ukrainians use our weapons to fight for their own independence and fight for us. The rest of Europe understands that. We don't, because we're protected over here. I don't want to send American troops into combat. That's why the Ukrainians are doing it for us. Can we always improve on where the tracking of the weaponry goes? Absolutely. But I've been there. I've seen it. That's why I went there. That's my job. So if you hear somebody who's never been to Ukraine or Russia or Poland, I'm sorry, not Russia, but Poland, talk about where this stuff is going, ask them if they've been there, because I have. I know where it's going, and we also know where it is all the time. Through the gift of what we're doing right now, that's what they're doing over there as well. So the front lines are in communication with the folks in Poland on how to fix and where the weaponry is. We do know that some they didn't put the proper barcode on some night vision goggles. We need to do that. I don't know why they didn't do it. That's DOD's responsibility, and we're going to hold them to account. But the big weaponry, that's going to decrease the combat effectiveness of a country that has joined with Iran and North Korea and China to defeat freedom around the world. As a moral man and as a Christian, if I know that the Russians are doing the same thing to the Ukrainians that Hamas did to the Israelis, do I distinguish between the two? But moreover, in 1994, we made a deal with Ukraine that said, you give up your nukes, we will protect you against invasion from Russia. And Russia said they wouldn't invade. When the Russians say something, they're lying. When they tell you they're going to go after something, they're telling the truth. They told us this a long time ago. Under the Obama administration, they invaded China just to see if it would work. Or, I'm sorry, Georgia.
Yeah.
And then in 2014, they went after Crimea. This is because of weakness, not because of strength. We have to be strong. Otherwise, Putin, China, Kim Jong-un, and the Ayatollahs are going to roll over the rest of the world. You can't bury your head in the sand. I want to make sure that they're armed so that we don't have to engage.
And here's one of the things you were just bringing up is underneath Obama, and that's where we're at right now. I really see, because Iran's a big supporter of all this stuff going on, and we're giving Iran money underneath the current administration. Well, we freed up money, and the same thing that Obama did.
No, we're not giving Iran money.
Well, they freed it up, correct? They freed up.
No. We banned that. They did not get that money.
So they didn't get it? Okay.
They did not get that money.
I know they were trying
Congress,
to do stuff.
we said they can't get the money. And
Okay.
House, no. Not
so
true.
that's what, of course, we out here, we don't hear everything. I mean, you look at the news cycle, you hear things, you get things. And that's the thing that we're hearing is that, hey, they're giving $6 billion freed up. It was their money. They said, you hear all these things, but in the end,
it did come up, and we pounced on that and said, no, you're not. And so it's frozen. So that didn't happen. That's why I say you got to be very careful about where you get your information, because the news doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, we know this.
Neither on the right or on the left. It exists here because I'm answering your questions, and I'm on video as your congressman telling you the truth. And I did it on DV LeBron the other day too. Yeah. So I love doing this stuff because it allows me the ability. And every once in a while I'll see something. Somebody said something on Instagram. Is this true? Well, where'd you get that? My neighbor who knows this. All right, look, no, but I'm glad you asked me, because I'll tell you the truth. And by the way, I have no pride of ownership, and I'm also humble enough to say when I screw up, because I was in the Navy and I was a carrier pilot, and every landing I was judged for how I landed, and so I'm willing to take criticism. But once I'm at 51%, I do this based on logic. I do it based on qualification. I do it based on merit. What is the merits of a bill that's coming up to me? Is it good for the country? Because I'll tell you this right now, and I'll tell every listener you are listening to, that's listening today or will listen later on. I don't need this job. This is my service to my country and my community. I'm an airline pilot. That was a easy and well-paying job. My family is sacrificing, and I am too. I'm proud to do it because this country's worth it, and because I've been blessed so deeply in my life that this is my way to give back and suffer the slings and arrows of criticism. That's fine. I've crossed that Rubicon, and everybody needs to know that when I do it because I think it's right, not for any other goals, not for anything else. And I'll dang sure tell you it's not for the money. No matter what you see on Instagram, there ain't no money in this gig. And to our state representatives, there's dang sure not any money in that one either. So, but if you've got questions and you're hearing rumors, I have a teletown hall every month. When I get back to the district, I have coffees with your congressman, which are essentially town halls. I just don't call them town halls. Everybody gets to have coffee, and I get to sit down with everybody and talk. I'll tell you the truth. And if I screw up, I'm willing to admit it, and I'm willing to take it. I love doing this. I love it. I'm able to make a contribution to my community with quiet professionalism to represent the people of this district who work very hard, take care of their families, and want to educate their kids the way we want to, and worship without being worried about what's going to happen next. Well, this is the best country on earth. It is still the best country on earth. So we've got to, apparently I'm being told I got to go back to work now.
That's what I kind of figured.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, sir.
I've seen a lot of people giving me the hook. Thank you very much for having this. Let's do it more.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good night.
See you later.
Afternoon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.